The announcement of the Tesla Model 2 has triggered a silent transformation in the global automotive market, especially in the used car segment. Even before any units hit the streets, the mere expectation of an affordable and technologically advanced electric vehicle has already begun to influence important consumer decisions. This change doesn't occur through aggressive campaigns or immediate discounts, but rather through a gradual shift in purchasing mentality. Many drivers have begun to question whether it's worthwhile to invest in a used combustion engine car at this time. The desire for financial predictability and lower mechanical risk has started to gain more relevance than a lower initial price. Thus, confidence in the future launch creates a powerful psychological effect. Consumers begin to see time as a strategic ally. Waiting can mean saving money in the long run, and this perception redefines priorities in the market. This phenomenon is particularly visible among more experienced buyers who have faced recurring problems with used vehicles over the years. Unexpected repairs, intermittent electrical failures, and unpredictable maintenance costs have contributed to increased caution in decision-making. Now, faced with the promise of a technically simpler car with predictable maintenance, many consumers are choosing to postpone the purchase. This stance does not represent a lack of interest in the automotive market, but rather a conscious reassessment of the risks involved. The used car ceases to be automatically the best economic alternative. A new logic emerges based on the total cost of ownership. The expectation of the new model creates a strategic pause in the flow of purchases. This pause, although subtle, is significant. The market begins to feel a gradual slowdown, and this slowdown reveals a deeper structural change. Contrary to what many might imagine, this transformation has not generated a sharp drop in used car prices. Instead, a slow weakening of demand is observed, accompanied by longer negotiations and progressively smaller margins. Sellers are still trying to maintain their prices, believing that the situation may return to the previous pattern. However, consumer behavior indicates that normal has already begun to change. The average time to sell vehicles has increased in several important markets. This increase has a direct impact on the working capital of dealerships and independent resellers. Inventories remain stagnant for longer. Operating costs continue to accumulate, and the need for adaptation becomes inevitable. The market begins to operate at a different pace, a pace marked by prudence. This change also redefines the criteria for comparing vehicles. For decades, the decisive factor was the purchase price. Now, technical reliability and the predictability of future costs are taking center stage. The modern consumer is beginning to ask more detailed questions about durability and maintenance history. The analysis is no longer superficial, but strategic. This new pattern of behavior does not arise randomly. It is driven by the perception that automotive technology is entering a new phase. A phase in which less complexity can mean more efficiency. And this idea challenges traditional concepts in the sector. The cheap car may no longer be the best deal. The reliable car becomes the truly smart investment. Another important aspect of this transformation is the profile of the most impacted audience. Drivers over 50 years old demonstrate greater sensitivity to this paradigm shift. The experience accumulated throughout their lives makes them value stability and financial security. For this group, the peace of mind of not having to deal with mechanical surprises is extremely valuable. The car ceases to be just a means of transportation. It becomes an element of quality of life. Thus, the promise of a simple and robust electric vehicle sparks immediate interest. Even without an exact delivery date, the idea of future reliability already influences present decisions. This behavior shows how expectations can shape entire markets. Anticipated confidence has real power, and this power is beginning to reshape the automotive sector. From a statistical point of view, signs of this change are already noticeable in different regions. The average time needed to sell a used car has increased considerably in recent years. This data, although it seems technical, reveals a relevant behavioral phenomenon. Buyers are taking longer to decide. They evaluate more options. They question more details, and often choose to wait. This waiting does not mean disinterest, but rather a financial strategy. The contemporary consumer is more informed and connected. Videos, technical analyses, and online discussions directly influence their perception of value. The result is a more reflective market, less impulsive, and potentially more sustainable in the long term. Furthermore, the absence of aggressive advertising campaigns makes this phenomenon even more interesting. The dissemination of expectations occurs mainly through conversations, social networks, and specialized content. The so-called digital word of mouth plays a fundamental role in this process. When consumers begin to share experiences and expectations, a network of spontaneous influence is created. This network has great credibility. Unlike traditional advertising, it is perceived as more authentic. Thus, the technical reputation of the new model grows organically. Trust is built gradually, and this silent construction impacts concrete economic decisions. The market enters a state of impasse. Buyers hesitate, sellers resist, and negotiations become more complex in the technical field. One of the main reasons for this anticipated confidence is related to the centralized electrical architecture promised for the new vehicle. Instead of dozens or hundreds of scattered electronic modules, the system uses large integrated control zones. This approach significantly reduces the number of potential failure points. It also facilitates diagnostics and repairs. For the consumer, this means fewer unexpected visits to the workshop, less emergency expenses, and greater predictability in financial planning. The technology, in this case, is not just seeking performance or luxury, it seeks functional simplicity. This simplicity can represent a silent revolution, a revolution that redefines the concept of automotive reliability. Electrical durability has always been one of the biggest challenges for modern vehicles, especially after several years of use. Corroded connectors, worn wires, and intermittent failures often lead to frustration among owners. The new technical proposal aims to minimize these structural problems. By reducing the system's complexity, the probability of unexpected failures is also reduced. This logic is simple, but extremely powerful. Fewer components mean less risk, and less risk means greater consumer confidence. Thus, technical innovation ceases to be just a competitive advantage. It becomes a decisive psychological factor. The purchase decision becomes guided by the search for peace of mind. Another significant advancement relates to the simplified thermal system. Efficient temperature management is essential for the longevity of any electric vehicle. The proposed new architecture replaces multiple traditional valves with an integrated rotary system. This solution reduces the number of moving parts and connections susceptible to wear. It also contributes to reducing the vehicle's overall weight. For the user, the impact is direct: less risk of leaks, less corrective maintenance, and greater durability over the years. The car ceases to be seen as a source of constant worry and becomes a reliable partner in daily life. The evolution in thermal systems represents not just an isolated technical improvement, but a shift in philosophy in automotive development. For many years, manufacturers prioritized performance and additional features, often increasing the internal complexity of vehicles. Now, an opposite trend is emerging, focused on structural efficiency and long-term reliability. This new approach seeks to eliminate redundancies and weak points before they become a real problem. For the consumer, this mentality represents security. The idea of owning a car designed to avoid future failures creates a different emotional relationship with the product. The fear of unexpected expenses diminishes. Confidence gradually grows, and this confidence directly influences purchasing behavior. Furthermore, the simplification of the thermal system contributes to a more stable user experience in different weather conditions. Vehicles exposed to intense heat or extreme cold often suffer greater wear and tear, on their cooling and heating systems. With fewer valves, connections, and components subject to fatigue, the new design promises greater durability over time. This technical robustness reinforces the perceived value of the vehicle. The buyer stops analyzing only the present and begins to consider the future more clearly. The car is no longer seen as an asset that inevitably deteriorates quickly. A real expectation of longevity emerges. This expectation, in itself, already alters the market equilibrium. Another fundamental element of this transformation is related to the use of large cast parts in the chassis structure, a process known as gigacasting. This technique replaces hundreds of smaller components joined by welds and bolts, creating more solid and integrated structural blocks. The result is a more rigid body, resistant to progressive deformation. Over the years, traditional vehicles can exhibit structural gaps, internal noise, and a gradual loss of stability. The new approach seeks to minimize these effects. For the driver, this translates into a feeling of firmness while driving. Even after long periods of use, the car tends to maintain characteristics close to the original. This consistency increases the perception of quality. The metaphor often used to explain gigacasting compares a complex jigsaw puzzle to a single solid block. While the former relies on the integrity of numerous individual connections, the latter offers natural stability through its own composition. This structural difference has direct implications for the vehicle's durability. Fewer joints mean fewer wear points and a lower probability of misalignment. In practical terms, the owner can expect less vibration and noise over the years. This quieter and more stable driving experience contributes to the driver's psychological comfort. The idea that the car ages better becomes a decisive argument, and this argument influences the market even before the official launch. Combined, these technical innovations create a new benchmark in the automotive sector. It's not just about introducing a cheaper car, but about redefining the concept of value. Consumers begin to evaluate purchases based on more sophisticated criteria. Durability, ease of maintenance, and structural stability become central factors. This shift in perspective alters the dynamics of negotiation in the used car market. Sellers face more informed and demanding buyers. Questions about technical history and future costs become more frequent. The purchase decision ceases to be impulsive. It becomes an analytical process, and this process slows down the traditional flow of the market. This scenario also generates indirect impacts on the business models of dealerships and independent resellers. With the increases time required to complete a sale, it becomes essential to rethink commercial strategies. One-off promotions and small price reductions are used as tools to stimulate negotiations. However, these actions are not always sufficient to reverse the trend of waiting. The modern consumer prefers to wait for an opportunity they consider safer. Thus, the inventory of used vehicles remains high for longer. This accumulation represents additional costs for storage, preventive maintenance, and natural depreciation. The sector enters a phase of inevitable adaptation. At the same time, a new narrative is emerging among buyers. The idea that waiting can be financially smarter than acting quickly. This mentality was not common in previous decades, when a scarcity of information limited the ability to plan. Today, access to detailed technical analyses allows for more strategic decisions. The future launch of a promising model is now incorporated into personal financial calculations. The car ceases to be merely an immediate need. It becomes part of a long-term strategy. This psychological transformation is profound, and its effects tend to intensify over time. Another relevant aspect is the growing influence of specialized digital content in shaping public opinion. Technical videos, detailed comparisons, and debates in online forums play a fundamental role in disseminating expectations. When experts explain concepts such as zona electrical architecture or gigacasting, the public gains a better understanding of the benefits of these technologies. This knowledge generates anticipatory confidence. Even consumers who have never had contact with electric vehicles begin to consider this possibility. The result is a gradual increase in interest in the segment. This interest, in turn, reduces the attractiveness of conventional used cars. The market enters a phase of silent transition. The transition doesn't happen uniformly across all regions or consumer profiles. In markets where electrical infrastructure is still limited, hesitation may be greater. However, the global trend points to continued growth in electric mobility. Government incentives, expansion of charging points, and technological advancements contribute to this evolution. Thus, the launch of an affordable model can act as a catalyst for broader changes. The impact goes beyond a single brand or product. It's about redefining the automotive ecosystem. Each individual decision to wait or postpone contributes to this collective movement. Meanwhile, traditional manufacturers are closely observing this new consumer behavior. Some have already begun processes of structural simplification and digitization of internal systems. Competition is now taking place not only in the field of design or performance, but also in perceived reliability. Companies that manage to convey technical security will have a strategic advantage. This competition can accelerate innovation throughout the sector. The ultimate beneficiary tends to be the consumer, who will have access to more durable and predictable vehicles. The market evolves, and this evolution is driven by expectations, not just by products already available. Another interesting point is the impact of this change on how resale value is perceived. Traditionally, depreciation was seen as inevitable and relatively predictable. Now, the introduction of technologies that promise greater longevity may alter this logic. Vehicles designed to age better tend to maintain value for longer. This possibility influences current purchasing decisions. Many consumers prefer to wait to buy a car that better preserves their investment. This financial rationality makes the market more sophisticated, and sophistication increases the importance of reliable technical information. Finally, the sum of all these factors creates an environment of intense expectation and gradual transformation. The used car market doesn't collapse, but begins to slowly reorganize itself. New priorities emerge. Old paradigms are questioned. Confidence in the technological future begins to compete with the urgency of present needs. In this scenario, each announced innovation gains significant symbolic weight. The vehicle hasn't even been officially launched yet, but it already exerts concrete influence. This influence shows how the automotive sector is increasingly connected to the perceptions and projections of the public. As time goes on and the launch of the Tesla Model 2 approaches, the feeling of anticipation is transforming into a true, silent economic phenomenon. It's not just about technological curiosity, but a concrete shift in how people plan their personal investments. The automobile, which for decades was seen as a relatively immediate and emotional purchase, is now being analyzed with strategic logic. Consumers are beginning to calculate not only the purchase price, but the financial impact over several years. This change in mindset reinforces the idea that the future of mobility is linked to predictability. And when predictability becomes a priority,